Vulnerable populations by Priscilla Matera. Um, let's start with infectious disease. People with infectious disease live in poor sanitary conditions. Some of them lack or has limited access to healthcare due to being uninsured or underinsured, and they are more at risk for chronic disease. Homelessness, as you can see, relates to people with infectious disease because, like people with infectious disease, homeless people are more at risk for chronic conditions and infectious disease due to lack of shelter, living out in the streets with unsanitary conditions, and they are more exposed to bacteria and infections because of their poor hygiene. Homeless people lack food, proper nutrition, shelter, and clothing. Homeless people are also limited to healthcare services because they don't have health insurance. Homelessness and poverty affect people's health status. Poverty can lead to homelessness. People in poverty also lack or has limited access to healthcare services due to being uninsured or underinsured. People living in poverty also lack proper nutrition because of the lack of financial support. Mental illness population, just like people in poverty lacks or has limited healthcare access, they are also more likely to suffer from chronic diseases such as schizophrenia and depression. People with mental illness are also more likely victims of abuse, such as physical abuse, verbal abuse, and emotional abuse, and they also lack financial and social support. Violence. People with violent behaviors may be victims of abuse, and some may suffer from mental illness such as schizophrenia. These people may have criminal behavior for violence or substance and alcohol abuse. Next is addiction. People suffering from addiction are addicted to drugs and or alcohol. Some may have violent behaviors because they may not be able to think properly anymore because they're high off of drugs and drunkenness. People with addiction have poor health, they're at risk for homelessness, and they may also have limited access to healthcare because of being uninsured or underinsured, and also people with addiction can also be at risk for poverty. Just like people with addiction, people living in rural settings also have lack or limited access to healthcare due to their geographical location and having no health insurance. Um, Also, these people have inadequate housing and having no poor environment, and also they may be living in poverty and have inadequate job skills. Just like people living in rural settings, people with migrant health can also be living in poverty. They can also live in poor environment, and they may also have inadequate housing and inadequate job skills, and also they may lack proper education, and they may have language barrier too. Um, the language barrier leading to inability to have proper access to healthcare. This population is also at risk for infection or infectious disease because coming from a country, like, foreign countries especially, they're more at risk for infectious disease such as Ebola, hepatitis, tuberculosis. So coming to the US, they may be carrying the disease. So yeah, this is my vulnerable populations lucid chart. Thank you.